The sun hung like a branding iron over the Arizona Badlands, scorching the earth until it cracked like old leather. Jack Harlan reined in his horse at the edge of a jagged canyon, his eyes narrowing against the glare. He'd been riding hard for days, chasing whispers of gold in these godforsaken hills, but what he saw below froze his blood colder than a winter norther. There, dangling from a frayed rope bridge over 100-foot drop, was a woman. An Apache, by her buckskin dress and the feathers braided into her dark hair. Her fingers clawed at the splintering wood, her body twisting in the wind as the bridge groaned under her weight. One more snap, and she'd plummet to the rocks below, smashed like a dropped whiskey bottle. Jack's heart slammed against his ribs. He wasn't no hero, just a drifter with a colt on his hip and a past he'd sooner forget. But something in her eyes, wild, defiant, staring up at him like a cornered wolf, pulled him off his saddle. "Hold on, damn it," he shouted, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. The bridge was Apache territory, and crossing it meant courting death from arrows or worse. Yet he tied his rope to a boulder and swung down, inch by inch, the wind whipping dust into his face. Her screams pierced the air as a plank gave way beneath her feet, sending shards tumbling into the abyss. He reached her just as the rope frayed to threads. Grabbing her wrist, he hauled her up with a grunt, muscles burning like fire. She was light, but fierce, kicking and scratching until he pinned her against the cliffside. "Easy, lady. I ain't here to hurt you." Her eyes locked on his, black as midnight, and for a split second, he saw gratitude flicker there before suspicion took over. She spat words in Apache, sharp as knives, but he didn't need to understand to know she was no damsel waiting for rescue. This was Running Deer, daughter of Chief Black Hawk, though Jack didn't know that yet. He just knew he'd stuck his neck out farther than a hangman's noose. As they scrambled back to solid ground, the ground trembled. Hoofbeats thundered from the ridge above, Apache warriors, painted for war, rifles glinting in the sun. Jack's hand flew to his holster, but the woman stepped in front, arms raised, shouting in her tongue. The lead rider, a scarred brute with eagle feathers in his hair, leveled his Winchester at Jack's chest. Time slowed to a crawl. One twitch, and it'd be over. But Running Deer kept talking, gesturing wildly at the bridge, at Jack. The warrior's eyes narrowed, then he lowered the rifle. With a grunt, he motioned for Jack to follow. No choice now, refuse, and he'd be buzzard bait. They rode into the Apache camp under a blood-red sunset, Jack's hands bound behind his back, his horse led by a silent brave. The village was hidden in a maze of red rock spires, teepees clustered around a central fire where women tended pots and children stared with wide eyes. Whispers rippled through the tribe like wind through sagebrush. Jack felt every gaze like a loaded gun. Chief Black Hawk emerged from the largest teepee, his face etched with lines deeper than the canyons, his presence commanding as a storm cloud. Running Deer knelt before him, recounting the tale in rapid Apache. The chief's eyes bored into Jack, weighing his soul. "You saved my daughter," Black Hawk said in broken English, his voice gravelly as tumbling rocks. "Why?" Jack swallowed hard, tasting dust. "Didn't seem right to let her fall. That's all." The chief nodded slowly, but his warriors shifted uneasily, hands on tomahawks. Apaches didn't take kindly to white men in their midst, too many raids, too much blood spilled over land and water rights. Jack knew the stories, settlers vanishing in the night, scalps hung as warnings. But Black Hawk raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "You will stay. Eat. Then we talk." That night, around the fire, Jack sat warily, gnawing on venison stew that burned his tongue. Running Deer sat across from him, her eyes never leaving his face. She was beautiful in a wild way, her skin bronzed by the sun, scars on her arms telling tales of battles fought. "You fool," she whispered in halting English when the others weren't listening. "Bridge was trap. For enemies." Jack's fork paused mid-air. "Trap? For who?" White soldiers. They come for our water hole. Her voice dropped lower. You ruined it. A chill ran down his spine. He'd blundered into something bigger than a rescue, a skirmish brewing between the tribe and the U.S. cavalry, who'd been pushing into Apache lands for months. If the bridge had claimed a patrol, it might have sparked all-out war. Now, with him here, things were tangled worse than barbed wire. As stars wheeled overhead, Black Hawk summoned Jack to his teepee. Inside, smoke curled from a pipe, the air thick with sage. You are Jack Harlan, the chief said, surprising him. Heard of you. Bounty hunter. Killed many. Jack stiffened. His reputation had followed him like a shadow, 10 years of tracking outlaws across the territories, leaving bodies in his wake. That life's behind me, he lied, though the weight of his past pressed heavy. Black Hawk leaned forward, eyes gleaming. My people face death. Soldiers come tomorrow. You fight with us, or die now. The words hit like a slug from a .45. Join the Apaches against the Bluecoats. That was treason, suicide. But refuse, and he'd never leave this camp alive. Running Deer's face flashed in his mind, fierce, unyielding. Something stirred in him, a spark he thought long dead. Dawn broke with gunfire echoing in the distance. The soldiers were early, a scouting party of 20 riders thundering toward the water hole, dust clouds billowing like smoke signals. Black Hawk's warriors mounted up, faces painted black for mourning or victory. Jack, handed a rifle and untied, rode beside Running Deer, his heart pounding. Why trust me, he yelled over the hoofbeats. You saved me, she shouted back. Debt must be paid. They ambushed from the rocks, arrows and bullets raining down like hail. Jack fired true, dropping a sergeant from his saddle, but horror gripped him as he recognized the uniforms, men like those he'd fought beside in the war. A bullet grazed his arm, blood soaking his shirt. Running Deer fought like a demon, her knife flashing as she pulled a soldier from his horse and ended him swift. But the tide turned ugly. Reinforcements crested the hill, 50 more cavalry, cannons in tow. Black Hawk's men fell back, screams piercing the chaos. Jack grabbed Running Deer as her horse bucked, an arrow in its flank. We gotta run, he roared. They fled into the canyons, the tribe scattering like leaves in a gale. Hiding in a narrow crevice, Jack bandaged her wound, their breaths ragged. Your father? He asked. She shook her head, tears cutting tracks through the war paint. Gone. To the spirits. Grief twisted her features, but then her eyes hardened. You. White man. Bring curse. Jack recoiled. I saved you. And doomed us, she hissed. Soldiers follow your trail now. The truth dawned like a hangman's sunrise. His horse's tracks, his scent, the Apaches moved like ghosts, but he was a beacon. In saving her, he'd painted a target on the tribe. Night fell, and they pressed on, joining remnants of the band in a hidden arroyo. Black Hawk was alive, wounded but fierce, his warriors down to a dozen. Around a low fire, he fixed Jack with a stare that could curdle milk. You fight well. But blood calls for blood. Jack's gut nodded. Was this it? A ritual killing to appease the spirits? Instead, Black Hawk pulled a pouch from his belt, spilling gold nuggets that glittered like fallen stars. Our secret mine. White men seek it. You take half. Led soldiers away. The shock hit Jack like a mule kick. Gold, the very thing he'd chased into these hills. Enough to buy a ranch, a new life. But the catch hung heavy: betray the tribe by drawing the cavalry off, or stay and die fighting. Running Deer watched him, her expression a storm. Choose, white man. He chose the gold, or so he thought, riding out at midnight with a sack heavy on his saddle. But as he crested a ridge, doubts gnawed like coyotes. The Apaches had trusted him, shared their fire. And Running Deer, her fire stirred something in his cold heart. Ambush came at dawn. Soldiers surrounded him, rifles cocked. Harlan. You're under arrest for aiding hostiles. Jack's blood ran cold. How did they know? He drew his Colt, but a shot rang out, grazing his temple. Blackness swallowed him. He woke bound in a fort stockade, head throbbing. The captain, a mustached tyrant named Reeves, leaned in close. We've been tracking you since you left Tucson. Knew you'd lead us to that Apache gold. Betrayal burned hotter than the sun. Someone had sold him out, but who? The Apaches? No, they needed him gone. Days blurred in the cell, rats scurrying over his boots. Then, a whisper through the bars, pissed, Harlan. It was Running Deer, cloaked in shadows, a knife glinting. Tribe sent me. You not betray. She cut his bonds, silent as a ghost, leading him to stolen horses. As they rode into the night, she confessed, spy in camp. White traitor. He told soldiers. Jack's jaw clenched. The traitor, old Silas, who'd pointed him to these hills. A setup from the start. They rejoined the tribe in a remote mesa, Black Hawk greeting him like a son. You came back. Proved worthy. But peace shattered with dawn's light. Reeves' cavalry stormed the mesa, cannons booming. Chaos erupted. Warriors falling, teepees aflame. Jack fought back-to-back with Running Deer, bullets whizzing like angry hornets. In the melee, he spotted Silas, riding with the soldiers, grinning like a fox in a henhouse. Jack charged, tackling him from his horse. You double-crossing snake. They grappled in the dirt, knives drawn. Silas slashed wild, cutting Jack's cheek. The gold's mine, Harlan. Apaches don't deserve it. Jack drove his blade home, ending the traitor with a gurgle. But victory soured as a cannonball exploded nearby, hurling him into darkness. He awoke to Running Deer's face hovering, bandaging his wounds in a cave. The tribe had won, barely, Reeves dead, soldiers routed. Black Hawk approached, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. You are one of us now. Brother. The words changed everything. Jack, the lone drifter, found family in the enemy. Running Deer smiled, her hand in his. Stay. Or go. He stayed, trading his colt for a bow, his solitude for love. But whispers of more soldiers loomed, a shadow over their fragile peace. Months passed in the hidden valleys, Jack learning Apache ways, hunting with silent arrows, reading the stars like a map. Running Deer became his world, her laughter echoing in the canyons, her touch igniting fires he'd never known. They wed under a full moon, Black Hawk blessing them with eagle feathers. Yet danger lurked. Scouts reported army buildups, forts sprouting like weeds. One stormy night, as thunder cracked the sky, a rider burst into camp, a young brave, arrow in his back. Soldiers, coming, for gold. Panic rippled. Black Hawk gathered the warriors. We fight. Or flee. Jack stood tall. There's another way. I know the white man's mind. His plan was madness, infiltrate the fort, sabotage their powder kegs. Running Deer begged him not to go. You die, I die with you. But he rode out, heart heavy as lead. Disguised as a trapper, he slipped into Fort Defiance under cover of rain. The barracks buzzed with talk of the Apache gold, maps spread on tables. Jack planted dynamite stolen from a mining cart, fuses hidden. As he snuck out, a guard spotted him. Halt! Gunfire erupted, bullets chewing the walls. Jack dove behind crates, returning fire. He lit the fuse, the hiss like a rattlesnake's warning. The explosion lit the night like daylight, flames devouring the fort. Chaos reigned. Soldiers fleeing, horses stampeding. Jack mounted up, but a stray shot hit his leg, blood pouring. He rode hard, vision blurring, collapsing at the camp's edge. Running deer rushed to him, tears streaming. Fool! Brave fool! The blast had crippled the army's advance, buying the tribe time to vanish deeper into the mountains. Black Hawk named Jack Eagle Eye, adopter into the clan. Yet the life change cut deeper. No longer a drifter, Jack found purpose in protecting his new kin. But scars remained, nightmares of battles, ghosts of men he'd killed. Years later, as gray touched his hair, he sat with running deer by a fire, their children playing nearby. Saving you was my doom, he teased. She smiled. Or your salvation. A scout rode in, face grim. White men again. Railroads coming. The cycle continued, but Jack was ready. His life, once aimless, now burned with fierce loyalty. The Apache way had remade him, from killer to guardian, loner to legend. In the end, it wasn't the gold that changed him, but the debt of a life saved, repaid in blood and fire. And as war drums echoed once more, Jack Harlan stood tall, ready for whatever shocking twist fate dealt next.